In this episode, we look at what happens when an organization does not meet its obligations and how privacy rights, legal demands, and retention rules shape security work. Non-compliance means the organization has failed to follow a law, regulation, contract, policy, standard, or required process that applies to its work. That failure might involve mishandling personal data, ignoring a required control, keeping records too long, deleting records too early, failing to respond to a legal order, or not honoring a privacy request. These topics can sound legal or administrative, but they matter deeply in cybersecurity because security teams often protect the evidence, systems, accounts, data, and records that prove whether the organization is meeting its duties. When you understand compliance consequences and privacy responsibilities, you begin to see that protecting information is also about protecting trust, accountability, and the organization's ability to operate. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at CyberAuthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Non-compliance can create reputational consequences before any fine or lawsuit appears. Reputation is the trust that customers, employees, partners, regulators, and the public place in the organization. If people believe an organization mishandles data, hides incidents, ignores privacy, or fails to protect records, they may stop doing business with it or become more cautious in every interaction. Reputation can be hard to rebuild because trust is emotional as well as practical. A technical fix may close a weakness, but it may not immediately restore confidence. This is especially true when the organization appears careless, slow to communicate, or dismissive of people affected by a failure. Cybersecurity plays a role here because many public failures begin with information handling, weak access control, missing records, poor monitoring, or an inability to explain what happened. Good compliance supports trust because it shows the organization takes obligations seriously. Financial consequences are often easier to measure, but they can come from many directions. An organization may face fines, penalties, legal costs, investigation costs, customer notification costs, credit monitoring costs, contract losses, insurance changes, and emergency remediation expenses. It may also lose revenue if customers leave or if a service must be paused while the organization corrects a problem. Non-compliance can make normal business more expensive because the organization may need outside counsel, consultants, auditors, forensic specialists, or new technology under urgent conditions. Urgent work usually costs more than planned improvement. Financial harm can also continue long after the initial failure. A company may pay more for insurance, face stricter contract terms, or lose competitive opportunities because partners no longer view it as reliable. Security controls may feel expensive, but uncontrolled compliance failures can become far more expensive. Legal consequences happen when non-compliance violates laws, regulations, court requirements, or legally enforceable obligations. These consequences may include investigations, lawsuits, penalties, settlements, consent orders, injunctions, or required corrective action plans. Legal exposure can also appear when an organization cannot produce records it was required to keep, deletes information after it should have been preserved, or fails to protect personal information according to applicable requirements. Cybersecurity teams may support legal response by preserving logs, protecting evidence, documenting access, maintaining retention controls, and helping determine what data was involved in an incident. You do not need to act like an attorney to understand the security lesson. When information is poorly controlled, the organization may not be able to prove what happened, who accessed what, when records changed, or whether required steps were followed. Weak evidence can make legal problems worse. Contractual consequences come from failing to meet promises made to customers, vendors, partners, employees, or other parties. A contract may require certain security controls, incident notification timelines, audit rights, data handling rules, retention periods, privacy commitments, or service levels. If the organization fails to meet those terms, the other party may terminate the contract, demand compensation, withhold payment, require corrective action, or refuse future business. Contractual noncompliance can be especially important in third-party relationships because one organization may rely on another to protect data or provide critical services. A vendor that mishandles customer data can put the customer organization in a difficult position, even if the vendor caused the immediate failure. This is why contracts, monitoring, and evidence matter. Security expectations should not be vague promises. They should be written, measurable when possible, and supported by records that show whether the requirements are being met. Licensing consequences can affect the organization's ability to operate in certain industries, markets, or professional environments. Some organizations need licenses, certifications, permits, registrations, or formal approvals to provide services. Noncompliance may put those permissions at risk. A healthcare provider, financial institution, government contractor, education provider, or professional services firm may depend on meeting specific requirements to continue operating normally. Licensing consequences may include suspension, restrictions, enhanced oversight, mandatory reporting, or loss of authority to perform certain work. Even if a license is not fully revoked, added restrictions can slow the business and damage confidence. Security teams may support licensing obligations through access control, logging, data protection, incident response, vulnerability management, and evidence collection. The larger point is that compliance failures can move beyond fines. They can threaten the organization's ability to do the work it exists to do. Privacy rights are the rights individuals may have over personal information that an organization collects, stores, uses, shares, or deletes. The exact rights depend on the laws, contracts, and policies that apply, but the common idea is that people should have some visibility and control over information about them. A person may have the right to know what data is collected, why it is used, who receives it, how long it is kept, and how it is protected. They may also have rights related to correction, deletion, restriction, objection, portability, or consent. From a security perspective, privacy rights matter because the organization must know where personal data exists before it can respond properly. If data is scattered across unknown systems, old spreadsheets, unmanaged cloud storage, and forgotten archives, privacy requests become difficult and risky. Good privacy depends on good information governance. Opt-in and opt-out choices are part of privacy control. Opt-in means a person takes an affirmative action to allow something, such as receiving marketing messages or permitting a certain use of their data. Opt-out means the person is included by default or previously included, but has a way to decline or stop that use. Which model is required depends on the context and applicable obligation. The security lesson is that consent choices must be recorded and respected. If someone opts out of a certain communication or data use, the organization needs systems and processes that honor that choice. If someone opts in, the organization should be able to show when and how that consent was given when required. Poor consent management creates compliance risk because the organization may use personal data in ways that conflict with the person's choice or the organization's own policy. Data correction rights allow a person to request that inaccurate personal information be fixed. This connects directly to integrity, one of the core security goals. Integrity means information remains accurate, complete, and trustworthy for its intended use. If an organization keeps wrong information about a person, the harm may be more than administrative. Incorrect data can affect access, billing, employment, benefits, services, eligibility, and decisions made about that person. A correction process needs to verify the request, confirm what data is involved, make approved changes, and keep appropriate records of what was corrected. The organization also needs to consider where copies of the data exist. Correcting one database may not fix reports, backups, shared files, or downstream systems. Security and privacy teams often need to work with business owners because correction is both a data quality issue and a compliance responsibility. Processing restrictions limit how personal data may be used, shared, analyzed, retained, or transferred. A person may object to certain processing, or a law or policy may restrict processing unless specific conditions are met. Processing is a broad word that can include collecting, storing, viewing, changing, sharing, deleting, or analyzing data. A restriction might prevent data from being used for marketing, shared with a partner, moved to another location, or used for automated decisions. Security supports these restrictions by helping enforce access controls, data classification, logging, encryption, data loss prevention, and approval workflows. The organization needs to know not only what data it has, but what it is allowed to do with that data. Misuse can occur even if the data is not stolen. Using data for an unauthorized purpose can still be a privacy failure. Controller and processor roles help define responsibility for personal data. A controller usually decides why and how personal data is processed. A processor usually handles personal data on behalf of the controller according to instructions. The names may vary across specific frameworks, but the distinction is useful. The controller has decision-making responsibility. The processor performs processing activities for the controller. For example, a company that collects customer information to provide a service may be the controller, while a cloud vendor that stores that information for the company may act as a processor. This relationship should be defined clearly because each party needs to understand its duties. Contracts often describe security requirements, privacy obligations, breach notification, subcontractor limits, data return, data deletion, and audit rights. Ownership also matters internally. Someone must be accountable for the data, its purpose, and the decisions made about it. Legal holds are instructions to preserve information because it may be needed for litigation, investigation, audit, or another legal process. When a legal hold is in place, normal deletion or retention schedules may be paused for the affected records. This is important because deleting relevant information after a hold has been issued can create serious legal problems. A legal hold may apply to emails, chat records, documents, logs, backups, databases, tickets, files, or other information connected to the matter. Security teams may help preserve logs, protect evidence, restrict changes, and ensure records are not altered or destroyed. The challenge is precision. A legal hold should preserve what is needed without freezing every piece of data forever. People involved need clear instructions so they know what must be kept and what normal processes should change while the hold remains active. Legal orders are formal demands issued through legal authority. They may require the organization to produce information, preserve records, stop an activity, provide access under defined conditions, or respond by a deadline. Examples can include subpoenas, warrants, court orders, regulatory demands, or other official requests, depending on the environment. The organization should have a controlled process for handling them because legal orders can involve sensitive information and strict timelines. Security teams should not casually release data just because someone asks with urgency. Requests need verification, proper authorization, legal review, and careful handling. Logs and chain of custody may matter if evidence is provided. The organization also needs to protect privacy while meeting lawful obligations. That balance can be difficult, which is why legal, privacy, compliance, and security teams should coordinate rather than acting separately. Retention requirements define how long information must be kept and when it should be disposed of. Keeping data too briefly can create compliance, operational, audit, or legal problems because the organization may not have records it is required to produce. Keeping data too long can increase risk because old information can be exposed in a breach, searched during litigation, or used in ways no longer justified. A retention policy should connect data type, business need, legal obligation, privacy expectation, and disposal method. Retention also needs to account for systems that quietly keep copies, such as backups, archives, logs, email systems, file shares, and cloud storage. When a legal hold exists, it can override normal disposal for specific records. When the hold is released, normal retention rules may resume. Good retention is not simply saving everything. It is keeping what is required for the right amount of time under the right protection. The main idea to carry forward is that non-compliance can harm an organization in ways that reach far beyond one failed control. Reputation can suffer, money can be lost, legal exposure can grow, contracts can be damaged, and licenses or operating permissions can be threatened. Privacy rights give people expectations and sometimes formal rights over how their personal information is used, corrected, restricted, retained, and shared. Controller and processor roles clarify who decides and who processes data on another party's behalf. Legal holds and legal orders require careful preservation, verification, and response. Retention requirements define how long information should remain and when it should be safely removed. For Security Plus SY0801, connect these topics to accountability. Security helps the organization protect data, prove actions, honor rights, preserve evidence, and meet obligations in a controlled way.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.